So the car next to me is one that hasn't been on the channel yet at all. It's actually belongs to a customer that we've been working with for quite some time. The story of the car isn't exactly straightforward. So it was supercharged and had the big end bearings changed by another company. After that, 55 miles later, in fact, it absolutely blew itself to bits, which really wasn't good. Looks like it was actually a mapping issue. So, yeah, quite where the fault is, who knows. But we basically were tasked with building a new engine for it. The customer supplied a sleeved S65 block, which we used as a basis to build up a completely sort of balanced, forged and obviously sleeved S65 with various bits in preparation for essentially throwing more boost at it and making a lot more power. Unfortunately, things didn't quite work out, and essentially when that block was then run up to temperature in the car, there were zero signs of it beforehand. It actually had a crack in the block, so it had a very, very slight coolant weep from this crack right in the depths of the V. Obviously we were gutted about it. With our engines, we obviously were doing it as a service, but we really do put our heart and soul into it, and seeing it then not be usable is absolutely heart-wrenching. So we had a bit of a chat with Tom, who owns the car, and put plans about to sleeve a block here rather than, I think the previous one was done in Poland or something like that, where if you're outsourcing machining, you don't quite know what processes are happening, and obviously there was an issue. So we got a block, he supplied a second-hand block. We got it sleeved using VAC Motorsport sleeves. And then we built it all up, essentially re-blocking his old engine, which makes it sound easy, but as with any engine building, there's so much measuring involved, it really is start again. Just so happens they're using the same components. So it's now built. We took the old engine out of the car, so actually had an interim engine, which was just a standard S65. And rather than outsource refitting the engine that we'd built, we've sort of offered for Tom to bring it to us, get the whole thing in-house. We can control the quality of the whole thing. As you'll see in a moment, there's been some pretty laughable issues with the car that we want to avoid completely. At the end of the day, we built that engine. It's our name, not physically on it, but it's our work. We want to make sure it's right, and we want to see Tom actually have some luck with this car. It was the best part of a year ago that we actually were building that original forged engine, and things have just dragged on and on and on. So we'll run through some details of the car and what state we found it in and what we've had to work through. Then I'll talk to you about exactly what the engine's going to be in terms of the complete setup, and then then we'll watch the product unfold. So when the car came to us, it had, as I mentioned, a standard S65 in it, which was just in essentially so that Tom could use the car where things were dragging on so much. However, it still had the remnants of the original Supercharged setup in here. We saw the car when it had the Supercharged engine in it, the previous forged build, and essentially it was transported here for us to try and test for this cracked block. To say that we were disappointed when we saw it would be an absolute understatement. All our work to keep things clean was covered in aluminium dust, debris, you name it. It was just an absolute mess. Nothing that had gone on around the engine had been cleaned. there was in fact signs of debris that went through the engine when we did take it apart. And we've had various things to tackle. So the car had method injection on it before, and this is the loom that they created, which was just wrapped around one of the power cables under the sort of ECU lid. No solder, no crimp, no nothing, just well, not even much tape. The wiring is probably one of the worst bits of wiring I've ever seen. It just has no place on anything, let alone a high performance car, especially when part of the mapping of this will be for meth. And so if that connection just pulled off, which it so easily would, you've then got an engine that's in effect running lean. And that'll destroy it in no time, and yet again destroy our work with someone else's poor workmanship. So this is one of the elements we've had to work through. Also the underside of the car, which has been fairly well rebuilt by this other firm. We found bolts missing everywhere, poorly installed components. You know, it's got poly bushes in there that have pretty much been torn to bits on assembly. So much more really, even just down to wheel arch trims with no screws in them, just dangling off. You name it, it's one of those things that comes in and you think, oh, it's a bit straightforward job, and essentially we're now left with quite a bit of work to do to fix this other firm's work, which Tom's been really good about. He's very understanding that we've been given what we've been given, and is all for us, essentially making sure it's good for him. He wants to enjoy this car on European road trips at the Nürburgring, things like that. And obviously with the power it's going to make, it needs to be right. You can't cut corners on a car of this performance, let alone any car that's going on the road or track. We're pretty outraged, to be honest, at the state it came in, but we're working to get it sorted. So this is the new engine that's gone in. Again, sleeve block, as I mentioned before, JE pistons, CP Carrillo rods, VAX Motorsport bearings, ARP head studs. Other than that, relatively standard, but obviously that's a highly reinforced bottom end. The idea is that then it'll go back to being supercharged, which is our next task on this once we've got the wiring loom and whatnot from the previous shop, which we have been waiting for a little bit now. So it'll run a G-Power supercharger, and with lower compression, forged internals and sleeve block. The recipe, I mean, should add up to about 725 horsepower, we're thinking. That's what the sort of figures seem to suggest of everything going on with it. Before that happens, as I say, we've got a lot of fixing to do to make sure this thing's right. I mean, while I remember some of the other issues, the engine mounts weren't even bolted in properly. It really was just an absolute shambles. So looking forward to getting this one sorted for Tom. The poor bloke really deserves it to be right now after all these years of trusting the wrong people. So hopefully that'll soon be underway, and he'll be a happy customer.